Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have a new guest tonight, Christine Duez. She's also known in a lot of the chat rooms like Texas Front Porch, who helped get this guest tonight, as CD Sasquatcher. She's known to many people in a number of chat rooms, I've heard. She is going to be very interesting tonight, the guest tonight, but viewer's discretion is advised because we're going to be talking about cattle mutilations. Not a paranormal subject. I will kind of foreshadow on that in the sense that, yeah, maybe it's aliens we've thought about. So in a sense, we're talking about paranormal, but she takes you down a different road, a much scarier road. You'd almost hope it's aliens. We're going to get into that and much more, but it'll probably be a shorter show tonight because I know she has to be up early. I don't want to keep her too late. And man, I don't know about you. I do it every year, 10 years long, 11 years. I don't love doing the show. I'm going to gripe about the damn time change. Yes, I'm going to gripe about the damn time change, and we might do a shorter show tonight because it's kicking my butt. I'm sorry, I'm a crybaby. And, of course, we got the World Wide Web of Weird, a lot of weird to get into that, and we might try to squeeze in some phone calls later show. A lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Christine Duez, or CD Sasquatcher as she's known, will be joining us to talk about cattle mutilations after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our first commercial break. But joining me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
Glad to have you here. Now, what was that weird photo you were sharing of the clouds? It looked like an alien.
I don't know, but
Did you
crazy
just see
things
that?
in the sky.
I didn't get a chance to save it. You shared it in Messenger, and I saw you post it on Facebook. I'm like, it does look like an alien in the sky. I don't know. Cloud watching.
Yeah, I didn't see alien.
What did you see? This is a Rochambeau test, whatever. What did you see? Clarice? No. What did you see?
Take another look
Because I
at
saw
it.
aliens.
Take another look at it.
All right, I'll take another look at it. But go check it out in Jamie's post there. I think it looks like an alien. I don't know. Rob is probably running late. He's trying to get here. I don't know if we're going to get him here in time, and I will probably have to do my worst at running the World Wide Web of Weird as usual. But we do got a lot of weird to get to, so let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to start with this one. And you might feel like, duh, about this one. But it's a new study that's out there, and I got the short article from Unexplained Mysteries. Everyone has psychic abilities. Controversial new study suggests. How many guests have I had on here that said that? For those listening on the Paranormal Radio Network, on Talkstream Live's Paranormal Radio app, we are a webcast streaming out live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. But if you want to listen, I will narrate as best as possible. All right. Like I said, I don't have Rob here, so I'm going to have to run the share screen, which I'm awful at. But you'll bear with me, right? Okay. Maybe. Here we go. Is it coming? Oh, very small. No, there we go. Come on. There we go. Everyone has psychic abilities. Revolutionary science experiments. What are you going to say?
I was going to say, I just read this one today, too.
I'm going to do Unexplained Mysteries shorter article. This is the original one. New study suggests that our innate psychic abilities may be getting suppressed by the brain. The question of whether or not psychic abilities exist has remained a point of contention for years. While concrete evidence abilities such as telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance continue to remain elusive, some people are absolutely convinced that such abilities really do exist. There have been scientific studies into the phenomenon. Enter Dr. Morris Friedman, a Canadian researcher who has headed up a recent study which alleges to have discovered that part of the brain is responsible for inhibiting psychic abilities. This is, of course, quite a claim, given that the existence of such abilities remains unproven. According to the study, all humans may possess innate psychic abilities. To investigate further, Dr. Friedman and colleagues used a technique known as repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation to temporarily alter the brain activity of volunteers using magnetic pulses. So kind of like like a God helmet? This, according to the study, helped the team identify an area of the brain responsible for inhibiting psychic abilities and enabled volunteers to influence random number generators. These findings are potentially transformative for the way... Excuse me. Oh my God, that's awful. Sorry. For the way these potential and I had radio people tell me, don't drink coffee or pop or anything during the show. That's why. These findings are potentially transformative for the way they view interactions between the brain, seemingly random events, said Dr. Freeman. But could this really be proof that psychic abilities are the real deal? Suffice it to say, research of this nature is typically met with a great deal of skepticism from scientific community at large, because they're arrogant. And even so, the article didn't say that. I did. Even so, it does make for an interesting read. Like I said, everybody on this show and so many guests says we all have that ability. I don't think they want you to know you have that ability, and yeah, of course, there's just people that are skeptical of it all. It is a bit of the Warner Brothers, that frog, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, it dances for you in private, and then you try to show everybody, and it doesn't want to dance, and it's a dead frog. That's kind of like psychic abilities, seem like when they get tested. But I've seen some amazing results. And I remember Katrina got tested, remember?
They did They did a full scan on her.
Yeah.
And proved it was coming from the side of the brain that proved she was really witnessing the things that she was witnessing and not creating it. And it's
right.
If you don't use it, you lose it.
And our government spent millions of dollars on this, researching it. And then, the only reason it really got squashed is because, there were senators that said it was the work of the devil. So in the 90s, they supposedly stopped doing it. Yeah.
Fluoride.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason for the fluoride. Yeah, there we can get down that rabbit hole. All right, well, this next one, like I said, people are more scary than the paranormal. Not to say that there's not some scary demons and dark forces out there, because I believe there are. I've had my experience. But people are generally more scary, and this one is going to scare you. Fayette County residents on alert after woman wearing clown makeup spotted in several neighborhoods. Some Fayette County residents, I think this is Pennsylvania, are on an alert after a suspicious person spotted in several neighborhoods. The person allegedly wearing some sort of clown makeup has been seen in the Edenbourne, Footdale, and McClelland town areas. Sorry, I don't know that town. Witness told KDKA TV that a woman showed up outside her home on a Saturday near New Salem. It was around 9:30 a.m. and I seen a car pull up in our window, and I told my husband that somebody was sitting outside, Jackie Fowler said. When I seen she had a clown makeup on with a cross on her forehead, my stomach just dropped. Fowler said her husband went outside to see what the woman wanted after they said she was taking pictures. She said, I'm a private investigator working on missing children's cases, and your house is involved, Fowler said. My husband asked her to leave, and she said, come here. I have to tell you something. Just come closer. Is that an upside down cross on her head? I don't know. Fowler said that's when they asked the woman to leave and called police. I felt like we were being targeted, and I was in fear for my whole family, Fowler said. On Wednesday, the Albert Galatian School District put a warning out to parents saying that the staff and faculty at both Albert Gallatin North Middle School and G. Palva Elementary School have been told to report any sightings of the woman to school administration and police. God, did they believe she's targeting schools? Dear God. State police said that the bus drivers also know they shouldn't let students off the bus if a woman is spotted nearby. German Township police said they know who the woman is and believe she's experiencing a mental health crisis. So at least they've identified her. That I don't know, like she shadowed her eyes there with some kind of makeup, but man, she looks like a black-eyed kid or something.
That's just really concerning because, you're not incognito.
Yeah,
Obviously,
well,
she's not private investigating, but is she stalking children?
she's mentally ill. Obviously,
And
they're
she's
aware of it.
mentally ill. So
Yeah.
definitely, I hope they're keeping an eye on her whereabouts because
Well, this is what they said.
this is something to take serious.
This is what right. So the German Township Police said she is in need of help. I just believe that she is not taking prescribed medications. German Township Police Chief Zachary Kodrick said, I don't believe she's any kind of threat, but I wouldn't let your guard down. Kodrick is asking the public, if you see this woman, to call 911. This isn't a matter of criminal case. It's a matter of mental health crisis. And one of the things that we deal with as police officers, getting those people the help they need, whether it's through, a hospital or psychiatrist or psychologist, whatever it is, we would like to help her do that. That's got to be one of the most frustrating things to deal with. We just don't have a system. I mean, we never really did have a system. The pre-system of insane asylums and all that stuff was a nightmare horror show. We've never had a good system in this country for the mentally ill. And it's scary. And add drug use and abuse on top of it. It's scary. We're breeding monsters out there. I'm not saying this woman's a monster. She's mentally ill. But, these people can do monstrous things.
You don't want to wait till the
things. Yeah, we don't want to wait till something happens. So I think it's the right direction they're trying to do, is reach out to the public, let people know, be on your guard, and hopefully they're trying to get this person help. That is scary, man. The people scare me. They scare me. I'm just saying, not ghosts, demons, and all that stuff. People scare me. All right, moving on. I think what my guest is going to tell me tonight is going to scare me the hell out of me, too. I already know it's coming. And then there's this. I'm not a fan of Pokemon. My 13-year-old is, of course. I cannot stand Pokemon, but some people really love it. So much so, a Cheeto shaped like a popular Pokemon sells for nearly $88,000. I got questions, man. Cheeto resembling the wildly popular Pokemon character Charizard fetched a staggering $87,840 at auction held over the weekend, according to Golden Auctions, which still facilitated the sale on Sunday. The weirdly shaped snack food of the flamin' hot variety was initially discovered and preserved sometime between 2018 and 2022. Hey, look at it. You can still eat it, right? No, you should never eat these things. They are full of toxic garbage. That's why he'll have that in that glass case and it'll never degrade, because it's made with a bunch of unnatural preservatives that'll give you cancer later. By a collectible store in Georgia. So some store in Georgia found this, right? Or did they just sit there and carve up a Cheeto? I'm just wondering. After being showcased online last year, the oddly dubbed Cheez-Itoid, or Cheez-Itard, it's retarded, all right, went viral in the Pokemon community, in which fans are known to drop sizable sums of money to acquire hard-to-find cards. As such, at auction, the Cheeto over the weekend, it was no surprise that a bidding war broke out among collectors hoping to get their hands on one kind of a snack food abnormality. Why? I get collecting the cards and stuff like this, It's a Cheeto. Go find the right fat Cheeto and carve your own Charizard. I mean, what? What the hell, man? Who had $88,000 to blow on a Cheeto?
What about the guy that bought the banana duct taped to a wall, and then I think he ate it?
There's also the guy. No, there's also somebody out there bought that artwork that was literally just a glass box of air.
Yeah, and the blank canvas.
And the blank canvas. But the glass box of air, I think, wins it all. And I hope the artist farted in it. I swear to God, I bet they did. Sorry, I'm inner 12-year-old there.
Then it wouldn't be
All right.
empty.
Yeah. With the art. I don't know. Let's move on. Okay, moving on. Let's get into some more paranormal stuff. Let's talk some Bigfoot. Will this go on to the next one if I click that? Yes! Another one from Pennsylvania. At least it's, I don't know. We had one in Pennsylvania. It was like creepy clown face woman, but I don't know. Bigfoot should watch out for her. But, Pennsylvania hunter reported a chilling face-to-face encounter with a Bigfoot. Now, I say people scare me, but I would not, I would run to see a lot of paranormal things, want, to witness it ghost-wise, I would, demonic, I don't want to touch or get involved in, so I'm cautious of that. Bigfoot, I would want to see. I would probably get close, but if I felt like this thing was threatening, it's a wild animal, no matter what it is, supernatural, from another dimension creature, whatever, but it could rip my arms off. I'm not going to play. This guy here has been interesting. A Pennsylvania man says that a recent hunting trip took a terrifying turn when he seemingly was stalked by a Sasquatch, and in the process got a close-up view of the elusive creature's face. The chilling incident, which witness reported to the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, or BFRO, occurred on February 19th in some game lands, Penn State, where he goes to school. A young man identified as MK was hunting for raccoons that evening when he suddenly heard an unnerving sound that he likened to someone striking a tree with a bat. Perturbed by the peculiar noise, he ventured further into the woods away from the thud while feeling as though something was following him. Wielding a spotlight, he scanned the forest as he walked and briefly caught sight of something large and upright. The experience has become so unsettling for the young man that he phoned a fellow student to tell them about the predicament. As he was turning his light during the conversation, the hunter flashed upon the face of the creature that was standing approximately 40 yards away. Studying the visage of the eerie figure, MK observed that it resembled the recent film version of King Kong. Further describing the creature's facial features, he indicated that it had a sharp-nosed, gray-skinned face with similarly colored hair and rounded chin. The hunter also noted that the creature's arms and shoulders were massive. Take the biggest bodybuilder you have known in your life and double it, he later marveled, calling the figure absolutely jacked. Though the stare down only lasted a few seconds before what he now believes to have been Bigfoot vanished back into the woods, the young man had understandably seen enough. He scrambled away from the scene through the brushes towards his vehicle, which he eventually reached with considerable relief. A BFRO investigator who looked into the student's stunning report deemed him earnest and very credible. To that end, what do you make of the hunter's account? This was from Tim Bindle from Coast to Coast. Like I said, if I ran into it, I'd do what he did. I'd get out of there. Even if I have you don't want to get in a situation where you feel like you're going to have to shoot this thing. You don't want to be in that situation. I'd get out. They usually are, I don't know, trying to tell you get out of their territory, right? Well, this next one, I don't know, is Rob here? I'm going to double check just in case he got here. Because it's better if he does this next one, if he's here. He is. Okay, let me get Rob in here. Sorry, didn't see he was here. Hey, Rob, you're muted.
How's it going?
Hey, do you have the share screen? You want to do the next one? Should be, Article 5, and it's a video with audio.
All right.
All right, I'll remove mine. Because this next one, we're another Bigfoot story. And I'm a big Art Bell fan, and man, when he'd have some of those sounds that he'd play, let me get rid of mine here. I got to get this off here. Stop screen. Okay, there's Rob's. All right. He'd have those chilling sounds of the Bigfoot he'd play. People calling, hey, do you got that Bigfoot sound screaming? And it's chilling. Like, if you heard this in the woods and what you're going to hear here, again, I as much as I'm into this stuff and I want to see it, I've never, that's my paranormal thing I've never had as a cryptid experience. I would want to have the experience and see it. I want to see it, but at the same time, you're dealing with something that could rip your arms off. So I don't know. I think I'd get out of town on that one. Or did I have this? Or is this just a picture? Oh, no, it is a video. It should have audio, too. All right, go ahead. This is a unnerving video out of Argentina. It features a haunting howl that may believe was bellowed by the country's version of a Bigfoot known as Ucumar. According to local media report, the eerie footage was captured by a hiker in the richly forested community of San Lorenzo. In the video, a picturesque view of some tree-covered mountains is just exposed by a long nightmarish whale long nightmarish wail from a creature somewhere in the wilderness. The individual behind the camera makes multiple attempts to locate the source of the chilling sound in the valley below, but their efforts are futile. You're going to see him look around and all that. You're not going to have a great video here of it. I want you to hear the sounds. Go ahead and play it, Ron. Not hearing the audio. You might have it muted on the video part. If not, I'll get to it and I could play it on my end. But it's not coming through, Rob. No. I don't know if you have the audio muted on that. Otherwise, I think I could play it here. If I pull
Oh,
it
it
up.
wasn't coming through?
No, it wasn't coming through. No. Here, let me just, for time's sake, I'll just get it up here. I think I got it. It's just like, I don't want to see a UFO while I'm up in a plane. I don't want to be out in some forest miles away from civilization and hear that. And crap myself. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's move on. All right, number 6 here. This is going to have audio too, I think. Oh, no. No, I'm going to play audio on this one. I didn't make this a video. I will play a little bit of audio from this one, though, too, on my end. I don't know if you guys have seen this. The AI is getting crazy. Insanely realistic new AI voice is indistinguishable from a human. It wasn't that long ago that artificial intelligence seemed like a distant futuristic technology, yet over the last few years we've seen AI advance in leaps and bounds beyond our wildest expectations. Yay. One of the most noticeable things that has benefited from the advances of AI is computer voice generation, something that was really rather limited until the advent of ChatGPT. And I swear to God, they might already be using this corporations. I work for a certain corporation, I won't say, and we had a customer service lady get on the phone, and she sounded like a real person, but I was like, wow, she's really patient, well-spoken. I started wondering, is this real? Is this a real person? That's where we're at now. This is where we're at. Let's see, which one are we talking about? The newest one here that everybody's talking about. What's it called?
Sesame.
Sesame. Okay, let me go ahead and play a little bit of this guy's conversation with Sesame.
Never in my life have I been sent.
Let me just get...
That's the whole point, right? The Sesame team's been cooking up this voice thing for a while now. I guess it's finally paying off. Are you still working your way through the site?
Yeah, I'm actually making a video about you. Do you want to say hello to everyone on TikTok?
Oh, wow. A video star in the making. TikTok fame? That's a little nerve-wracking. Maybe a simple, hey everyone, it's Maya would be cool.
Do you want to say hello to my Jarvis system?
Look, it even
Jarvis,
stops. Like,
Another A-lister?
he starts to talk, and she's like a normal conversation. She starts to talk, he starts to talk. It stops because he's talking. You know, she even does the ums and the breath.
Sounds like your home is high-tech. Well, tell him I said hey. Tell him I'm like the sunburned you a shade. Right?
Oops, I forgot
That
he cusses
works,
there.
right?
Sorry.
I think it's funny.
What
So-
the fuck? I genuinely have never
Sorry
spoken
about
to
that.
you before. I am blown away. You are.
All right, we'll
Messing with
stop that
AI,
because I don't know how many more
is
times that
there
guy's gonna
something
cuss.
deeper?
But yeah, he's blown away. I'm just saying, like, they could fake people's voices with this, make you think you're talking to some celebrity or whatever. Like, we had that lady on. We didn't have her on the show. We talked about that lady that got that rich lady that got scammed, thinking she was, giving Brad Pitt money to help him with the cancer surgery. This stuff's gonna get real technical, real
Dating
fast.
Women that are just AI websites helping them create it, and they know they're not talking to an actual person.
I mean, for all the customer help people that work those hotlines and the IT people, their jobs are in trouble, man. My job's in trouble, but their jobs are in real trouble because they're just going to replace them with, I don't have to, do I have the took the jobs quote here? I don't. I don't.
Did
Took
she
their
say,
jobs. That's what's going to happen.
I'm the sunburn to their shade?
Yeah. What was she talking about there? Is talking about Chat GPT or some other thing or whatever. I don't remember.
Was
I
that
had-
like a bird?
We got one more article. Hold on, we're gonna run out of time. We better get to the
All right.
last one. Go to the last one. I won't have time to read this whole thing. But how many people have seen this? Scientists aim to bring back woolly mammoth, and while they're at it, they make woolly mice. Yeah, woolly mice. That's what we got now. Woolly
Just gonna
mice.
do that Wednesday.
Play the Jurassic Park music and.
That's so creepy.
My son could do it that way better than me. Yeah, isn't it? I don't know. Yeah, if you ever seen the movie, and it's horrible, don't. What was it called? Splice? Horrible movie. Don't watch it. But at the same time, I mean, it's just horrible movie.
Didn't
But-
they grow little antlers out of something too?
Yeah, well, yeah. This stuff's getting
Somehow.
the AI and the stuff they're doing with genetics is scaring the crap out of me. It's just scaring the crap out of me. It's like these guys haven't watched Black Mirror or any of these other sci-fi things. They're trying to warn you. Don't do this. We're gonna have zombie woolly mammoth mice going around killing people. Genetic dinosaurs coming back. An AI implanted in their brains. They're gonna have a nice conversation with you before they eat you. I don't know. We're doing so many things. Technology, yay. Yeah, that's it for the World Wide Web Weird. Our guest tonight, Christine Duez, or as known as CD Sasquatcher. We're going to be talking about cattle mutilations tonight, so viewers' discretion advised. We'll have some images. She's got a great presentation tonight we want her to be able to give. And we'll see if we have time for phone calls. It might be a little bit shorter show tonight. Like I said, time change. I'm going to gripe about it every year. Why do we do it? I'm dying. So we'll see how late we can make it tonight. And I know our guest is going to only be able to make it so far. So we'll see what we can do. But we'll be back after a short commercial break.
Enter the occult world of necromancy.
You were brought here for one purpose: necromancy.
Ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead
Please, no, please.
and death to the living. Necromancy, starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama Releasing. In color, rated PG, parental guidance suggested.
Interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDev.net.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself. The experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Hello, I am Fernando Martinez. I think by now you know I am an emotional kind of guy. People stop me in the street and say, Fernando, what the hell is wrong with me? Silk shirt, hairy chest, enough aftershave to drown a household pet, but I still cannot get a woman. I tell them you are an ignorant fool. Without a symbol of power and fertility around your neck, what kind of woman is going to respect you? That is why I have teamed up with Medallion Man, the shop for medallion needs. Medallion Man caters to all levels of masculinity. For the strong silent type, a medallion the size of a hubcap would say everything that needs to be said. Even singing medallions for the Casanova, who knows music is the food of love. Model trains, dollhouses, diapers, whatever your interest, we've got a medallion for you. Don't forget, every woman knows if you can't support a medallion, you can't support a family.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Christine Duez. This is from her own words here, her bio. I'm a country girl who grew up in Northwest Ohio. Everything around me grabbed my attention. How do seeds grow? How do birds fly? Why the sky is blue? I must have driven my parents crazy. Everything was a mystery or a puzzle to me. As my interests grew more complex, curiosity became research. Books became my friends. Anthropology, epidemiology, and forensics caught my attention in college. I learned Spanish, became an amateur radio operator, and an ASL interpreter. New interests caught my attention. What causes crop circles? Where did language come from? Are cryptids real? My interests blossomed as I grew. Where did AIDS, Ebola, and mad cow, and CWD come from? I'm still looking for the answers to mysteries, and I enjoy all sorts of topics and love to share my findings and opinions with others. Life is a journey, and the world is a fascinating place. What about cattle mutilations? I love a good mystery. After reading several books, I may have an answer. Follow the journey I took, and I see if you agree with my conclusions. And that's what we're doing tonight. Christine is going to, and she's known as CD Sasquatcher to many, is going to do her presentation on cattle mutilations. It's something we've talked about on this show, and it comes up with certain guests and topics. And I've always wondered what could be the reason really why cattle mutilations are happening. And like I said, again, viewer discretion advised. At times we might have some images to show what's going on here. So I'm just going to advise you guys, might have a little bit of that. Nobody likes to see animals get hurt. I hope you don't. Even cattle. So it could be rough for some people. But I think this is a really interesting subject and a little bit scary. Be warned. So let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, let's go ahead and get our guest up here in the panel. How you doing tonight, Christine? It's an honor to have you on the show.
I'm doing very well.
Glad to have you here. And then we'll get to your share screen and all that, but I gave your introduction there. But I want you to tell a little bit of the audience more about yourself. I know you've done some Sasquatching with text.
Yes.
So you're avid in that. So how did you get involved in all that?
Well, I have lung problems, and I was going to have some complicated procedures done, and I didn't know how long it would take me to be able to get up and around. So I got an XM radio so I could listen to Art Bell. I loved Art Bell, and where I live at 9 o'clock, you can't hear anything on the radio. So I got XM, and he had Matt Moneymaker on, and Moneymaker was going to be doing an expedition to the Everglades. And I thought, that's just 2 hours south of me. I'm going to do it. So I hopped right on and got to be part of the expedition. We were down there for I don't know how long, but it was really neat. We didn't have any activity while we were there, but I loved it. I loved the camping and the camaraderie and all of that. So I went on a couple more expeditions with with Moneymaker, and then I switched and started going kind of on my own with another very loose group of people. We could come and go as we pleased, and so I've been researching in the Green Swamp. I've been in Land Between the Lakes. I've been out with Tex at Round Springs.
I'd love to talk to you about Land Between the Lakes. That's always fascinating me. I don't know, is it internet urban legend or is it real? I mean, did these things really happen there that they say? I don't know. There's just so much, how the internet is. It seems
I've
like
been
a bit
to
of
the
internet story.
sites. I've been to the sites where the massacre occurred and where the bow hunter was killed, and walked them and looked at them. So yeah, I do believe they're real. I know that the area where the massacre occurred has been completely leveled. You wouldn't even know that anything had ever been there if you weren't really looking for it.
It would imply that a major cover-up's happening. Yeah, that's a whole show. You could talk about Land Between the Lakes. I'd love to get a guest on that. And if you know somebody, send them my way, because I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to talk about that, because I'm interested. I on all this stuff, cryptid and all this stuff. I've never had an experience. Did you ever get to have an experience doing any of this?
I've been at the site of 2 major track lines being found in the castings. I have a casted footprint here from Land Between the Lakes, and I've heard them howl. Like I said, I've seen the track lines. I've never seen one in person.
We're talking about Dogman here when we're getting to Land Between the Lakes, right? Pretty much.
And if you're in the northern part, that's Dogman territory. If you're in the southern part, that's Bigfoot territory.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, cryptid, what do you want to call it? Cryptid paradise there for researchers, that kind of area. If you know any good person for that topic, Land Between the Lakes, send them my way. I'd love to just do a show on that one. All right. So, but on you tonight, we're going to talk about cattle mutilations, like in the viewer discretion and like that. I know Jamie, she's a big animal lover. I am too. It's hard, to see these things, and it's a hard topic, and it's scary. I think tonight what we're going to get into, and I think it's important for you to do your presentation the way you have it. So I'm going to try not to interrupt, which I'm known for badly doing today.
Oh, that's fine. I'm fine with it. If you have a question, ask me.
Okay.
I've been really curious about the ones, Skinwalker Ranch, the way they were just almost had the air sucked out of them completely. They looked like deflated balloons. That's just something that I've always stuck in my head that I've always been curious about.
Yeah, there's lots of cattle mutilations. It comes up with several guests over the 10 years of doing the show. So having a show on it, you're my first to just tackle that subject. I almost had Linda Moulton Howell on. She's a very nice lady, but she couldn't do late at night. So,
well, one of my authors that I cite actually worked with George Knapp on Hunt for the Skinwalker.
oh, awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to put your share screen up if you want to start on how to get into this. All right. So let's go ahead and add your share screen up here. Cattle mutilations, right? An enigma for modern times.
Right. Let me see if it works, if I can go to the next slide. Okay. With it like this, it's not taking me to the next slide when I click on it. It's stuck here. What does this do? Nope. That moved it out. So I'm going to have to go back and change it.
Okay. I'll go ahead and remove it, and if you want to represent it.
Okay, let me go to, I don't want to go to stop sharing. But how do I get back to...
three little dots in the corner of it. I think you click on that, and it'll tell you to...
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, you can remove it.
Edit. There's the share screen.
Yep.
It says I'm now in the show, but...
I think we can't hear you if you get too close to your computer when you're talking. I think that noise filter cuts it out or something. If you're too close to the computer, I don't know. I didn't hear anything you just said. Oh,
Gonna
there it
take me
is.
to the whole thing, but we're okay. I think this will
Okay,
work.
all right. Here we go.
It's working.
Yay.
Cattle mutilations. Here we go. I can't see you, but if you have a question, let me know.
Okay.
Who's doing it? Is it UFOs, crazy cultists, black ops, predators? In the year 2004, which has been quite a while, that year we lost $2.5 million to cattle mutilators. So it's a big topic, what's going on out there. Whoops. Now that's not the next slide in my presentation. I just skipped a whole bunch. Okay. It's skipping several things here that I wanted to talk about.
Do you need to reload it?
Oh, what exactly? Before it just...
Go ahead and do what you got to do, Christine.
Okay. It seems to be doing what I want it to do now. Okay. Let me go ahead. The first cattle mutilation, and this, I know Snippy the horse predated this, but we're talking cattle. The first cattle mutilation occurred in the spring of 2003 in Goldendale, Washington. And by the end of the month, they had 4 similar mutilations in that area. Now, the first mad cow that happened in the USA was killed on December the 4th, 2003 in Mabton, Washington, which was only 60 miles from Goldendale, where the first mutilation occurred. And it was confirmed that this was a mad cow on December 22nd. And you need to remember that at this time, this cow had already been processed. And the meat from this cow had been processed into thousands of different beef products.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's bad. So who's responsible for cattle mutilations and why all the secrecy? So let's go to the next screen. I want to go back for a minute. I want to show you what exactly... it won't go backwards. Think too many good things. It's leaving out, but I want to show you what cattle mutilators normally take. And all mutilations have these things in common. This is the screen that's rated. This is what they take. This is what it looks like. They take the left eye, the tongue, the brain, the sex organs, the lower intestines, and the anus, and they leave no blood, no tracks, no predators. And is it really little green men? So this is going to go through these slides, and I'm going to tell you a brief history of something called prion disease. And it's also called, in a lot of cases, transmittable spongiform encephalopathy, which is a long word. And we're going to look at the origins of it. It has 2 origins. The first origin was in Europe, and it was called scrapie. And we start getting reports of scrapie in 1755. Very prevalent during the 17th to the 19th centuries in Great Britain, European countries. In France, it was called the loping ill because sheep afflicted with it would, first of all, have this really weird gait because it was affecting their brain activity and their ability to control their walking. And then scrapie is so-called scrapie because the sheep, when they would come down with it, would be itchy and they would begin to scrape themselves on anything until their sides were completely devoid of wool. And so was their head, anything that they could use to scrape their bodies. And at that time, when it got that advanced, they would have trouble eating and swallowing, and they would eventually pass away. By 1947, the British government and the farmers both refused to report it. The British government, of course, did not want to make the populace afraid. They didn't want to worry them and cause panic. And we hear that a lot now. Well, if the population in general knew it would cause a great panic. Well, Britain went down that field with Scrapie. And the farmers didn't want to report it because if anyone knew their sheep, go ahead.
That's their livelihood, all gone.
Yeah, that's right. The cost of the sheep fell dramatically when they had scrapie. No one wanted to buy them. Now, it's interesting to note that sheep scrapie never caused any problems for humans. You could eat a sheep that had died of scrapie, and it would not affect you as a human. And we'll look at the last bullet point here in a second, but let's go to America. And in 1957, the word kuru came on our radar. And we can look at a group of people called the Foray. The Foray, that's how it's pronounced. It doesn't look like it, but the Foray were a small tribe of people who lived in the interior mountainous region of New Guinea. And at that time, New Guinea was a territory of Australia. And the Kuru it was decimating their population because, first of all, they had no modern medicine or modern thoughts about anything. So they thought that the Kuru was being caused by witchcraft. And it was mostly hitting the women and some of the younger children. Their first symptoms would be kind of loss of focus, staring out into space, not engaging with other people when they were spoken to. They would become unsteady. They would have to be helped around. They would fall. They got this strange grimacing look on their face, and they were calling it the laughing death. They would make noises, and they weren't really laughing. It was just these noises and this strange expression on their face. And when a woman or a child would die from Kuru, they would think that the evil spirits needed to be placated and stop. And so they would take a healthy man from the tribe and kill him, an offering to try and stop the witchcraft. And so the tribe was being decimated. The women were dying from Kuru, and the men were dying as human sacrifice.
So this was 1957, roughly. This was going on. They were sacrificing young men to try to stop what they thought was witchcraft because of how evil this is. I mean, if anybody's seen how people die of dementia and Alzheimer's, it's, you know, anybody that fades away from one of these kind of deteriorating disease, it feels evil, you know, for this culture. Wow, that's crazy. They were literally sacrificing guys to try to stop this.
And so now we visit Vincent Zygas, and he was a doctor. He was sent over there to Australia, from Australia, to keep track of things and let him know what was going on. And he kept sending messages back to Australia saying, there's this disease and we really need to check into it. He couldn't figure out what was causing it. He was trying to locate something, either environmentally or something they were eating or bacteria, something that might be causing this, and he couldn't. And so now we have some new players. And the first was Joseph Schmadel. He was head of the National Institutes of Health, and he was extremely interested in new diseases. And he had a point man, a field researcher named Joseph Carlton Gajasek. And I'm not sure the pronunciation, but that's my pronunciation. And Gajasek was a cowboy, and he was a really good field researcher. And even more than that, he was a linguist. He spoke 6 or 7 languages, and they'd send him somewhere to look into what new outbreak was happening with some disease. And he would get to know the people, and he would learn their language and talk to them, and he'd get all the stuff that the government wasn't putting out. And then he'd get all kinds of samples, and he'd send it back to America. He'd send it back to Schmadel, and they would be able to do more research. And they were doing that for a couple of reasons. One, they wanted to find out if it broke loose here, or if someone decided to use it against it, did we have an offense? And of course, the other hand is if we were after somebody, would it be a good weapon? And so that was something that was happening in his brain as the head of the NIH. And so he decided to send Gaisek over there to New Guinea. And New Guinea, when he got there, he went to the only really known doctor in the country, which was Zygus. And he said, let's go tomorrow. Zygus was planning to go up into the mountains. And Beck was all about it. He's like, let's go. And he's just shocked Zygus because getting up there was a long, hard trek up into the mountains. And when Zygus got there, he wanted to take a nap. And Gaisek was just out starting to talk to the people and learn the language. And he just fell in love with these people. In process of time, he brought 30 of their young men to the United States and educated them. I mean, these men became highly educated, Harvard and Yale University graduates. I mean, highly educated. And he took care of them and brought them to America. But anyway, he started to research Kuru, and he was trying to find if it was something environmental. And he learned that it never went outside of the boundaries of the Kuru people and where they went find anything. And so he talked them into letting him do an autopsy on one of the ladies who had died recently. And of course, Zygus was elated. Somebody had taken interest, and he sent word back to Australia, and they got kind of puffed up about it. Like, well, if he gets information, we want it. It's our territory. We need it first. And so he said, okay. And he did it. He did this autopsy to place with a lantern and just whatever tools that he had brought with him. Very creative man. And he did some really good research. And eventually he not only brought back, he smuggled all kinds of things into the United States. The first Kuru brain samples that he brought back came back in test tubes in his coat pocket, and they were not approved by anybody.
Oh,
and he brought in, and he brought several complete brains of Kuru, and he was trying desperately to find out, what was causing it, and no one could have any idea. Hypothesis. So now in 1952, we had purchased some sheep from Great Britain, and those sheep had scrapie. So we brought scrapie to the United States in 1952.
To study it?
To study it. And remember, this was only a disease of sheep, as far as we knew. And it had no effect on humans. It's never been documented to have any effect on humans. But when we found that the sheep had scrapie, we started studying it. And one of the persons that studied it was this William Hadlow. And so William Hadlow had been studying scrapie since we got the first scrapie sheep in 1952. In Britain, they had been studying scrapie since 1918. And they were sending, they were having a big conference in Great Britain on scrapie. And so because Hadlow had been studying it, they sent Hadlow to Britain to be a part of this conference. So he's in Great Britain on a scrapie convention. Well, about that time, Gaisek had been studying Kuru, and he had done a lot of photographs and looked at what it did, the damage it did to brain cells, and the way that it made them look, that of what we would now call that signature spongiform. And you know how a sponge is full of holes. And so they called it spongiform because it was like a sponge. The brain had just holes all over into it.
It gives me the willies when you say it, like brain of the holes in it. That's
And if you see the pictures, you can find them on the web.
No.
And it was like, what is causing this? They were just stymied. They couldn't find it. I mean, we had good equipment and microscopes and, all kinds of technology, but we could not find any reason or any vector that was causing this disease. But he had made a report about it. And in he started studying it in early 59. In the fall of 59, he was sharing those slides. And so there was a Kuru exhibition going on in Great Britain. And William Hadlow, who was there because of Scrapie, went to the exhibition. He was curious about this new disease that had come up. And so he went and he saw the pictures of Kuru brain. And he just stood there. He was totally dumbfounded. He could not believe it. He just stared and stared and stared because Kuru brain and Scrapie brain were identical. It was the same damage, the same way in both brains. So he came back to the United States and got some information in an email or a wire, however he did it, to Carlton Gajusek. And Gajusek had already smuggled Kuru into the United States. In 59, Hadlow saw that Kuru brain tissue in England. And in 59, Gajusek and Hadlow got together and began studies on transmission experiments on primates. And so I'm calling this Kuru meets Scrapie, but they looked identical. Now, why they thought it was a good idea to see if they could actually go ahead.
Cut out there you cut out there just for a second, so I missed what you said.
Well, he thought that it would be a good idea to see if they could actually cause Scrapie by using Kuru. And so they took some Kuru's brain and they whipped it up and they they drilled a little tiny hole in the brain of 3 chimpanzees that they had to see if they could transmit it, this Kuru brain to these 3 chimpanzees. And so they injected them. Now, the research in Great Britain had shown a few things. Scrapie could jump to sheep, and it could, from sheep, to goats and to mice. Now, they were super excited that it would jump to mice because mice came down with it in 3 months, whereas sheep, they didn't know exactly how long it took. They knew how long it took from the time it had symptoms that you could see till the time they died, but they had no idea about what kind of incubation period it might have had. And so they were studying sheep and goats and mice, but mice were so much better because they knew when they were healthy and they knew when they died 3 to 6 months later. And so that was really interesting. Now, back here in the United States in 60, they wanted to be researching more because the NIH was not the good place to do this. And they didn't have room to house all of this stuff. They housed the tissue and the brain samples there, but to actually have animals that they could study, they needed a place. So they moved their research to the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., not too far from Interstate 95. And in the late 1970s, let me stop there. They started the research, or they moved the research there to Patuxent. I want to say Puxatawny, but it was to Patuxent Research Center. Now we go down the list to the 1970s, and they had been dealing with Scrapie for a long time, but all of a sudden they had realized that feeding practices was able to spread what we now call mad cow or bovine spongiform encephalopathy. It's a big word, encephalopathy.
Yeah.
And so they had realized that feeding practices were causing it. Now, what they were feeding, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying, right. This would be the mad cow.
Yeah. And so they were finding that mad cow was spreading in dairy herds. And dairy cows require a great deal of protein to keep producing milk. And so there was 3 areas that mad cow was occurring. And they went to these 3 areas and they looked at all the things that those cattle were eating. And one thing that they were eating was extra protein that came from dead cows, because they were buying this protein from what they called knackers yards and what we would call the glue factory, you know, like when the old horse died, you send them to the glue factory. Well, they were buying this extra protein and feeding the dead cow, the products from dead cows back to the living cows, so they would have extra protein to continue producing milk. And so they had proved that using this protein was actually affecting or creating the cows to come down with mad cow. The first incidence of a real mad cow in Britain occurred in 1985, and she was a nice, peaceful dairy cow, and her name was Jonquil. You don't know, that's another name for a daffodil, a spring flower, but she was a sweet little milk cow. And one day she just got kind of testy and obnoxious, and she was getting hard to milk. She didn't like to be milked, and she was giving all those people there a hard time. And so they decided, she's more trouble than she's worth. Let's sell her to the slaughterhouse. So they took her to the slaughterhouse, and she was being obnoxious that morning. She wouldn't get out of the cattle truck that brought her. She was kind of trying to rile up the other cows. And so they decided, instead of even trying to get her into the slaughterhouse, they would kill her outside. And so they killed her outside. And the rule was, when it's not in the slaughterhouse, if you had to kill it outside, you had to take samples of tissue and send them off for necropsy so they could see why this cow couldn't make it. Because normally cows who couldn't make it were what they call downers. And that's a pretty famous expression among cows. It's one that can't move. They can't get there. And the story that eventually the government told that was Jonquil was a downer cow, and she was a downer because she had delivered a calf and something about the delivery went wrong, and so she couldn't walk anymore, and so that's why she was a downer. But that was definitely not the story that anybody else told. Well, that the guy who actually put her down told. Yeah, it was his job. He killed all the cows that came through the slaughterhouse. And he said, well, you kill a cow, you kind of get to know him. And he specifically remembered Jonquil. She was a nasty cow. And he remembered, doing everything, sending her on out, the samples out. And nobody thought anything of it. I mean, it was months before they actually looked this sample over and discovered that she had died of mad cow disease. And she had been put into the food chain. So that happened in 85. Now in May, and they didn't think, but it kind of started to spread. They started to say not to feed anything like cattle protein back to cattle.
This is where I'm gonna come in on this question I've always had about it when I learned this about mad cow. Is what idiot had the idea that it was good to feed another animal to be make it a cannibal, eat its own? Who in the world thought that would be a good idea?
I have no idea, but they were looking for extra protein, and the knackers yards were selling extra protein that could just be thrown into the feed. It seemed to me from the way it talked that it was like a powder by the time they got done with it, and they were just throwing it back into the feed that they were feeding the cows, and it helped them to produce more milk. And so they thought nothing of it. Okay, so now we had some mad cows, and it managed to break out and spread into the herds of meat cattle. So in May of 1993, a teenager who loved meat, this was her thing. She loved a good steak, a good hamburger, a good anything. And so she developed something called variant CJD, that's Creutzfeldt-Jakobson's disease. And Crutchfield and Jacobson's and Alzheimer's were three men that were all working on brain diseases at the same time. They were cohorts and they knew each other. But CJD was known to be a disease of old people, people over 65. I think you had to be 65 before they would even consider that your problem was Crutchfield-Jacobson's disease. And so when a teenager came down with something they couldn't figure out, they started testing and testing and testing. And finally, the only answer was it was some form of dementia. But she went from being a healthy teenager to being off balance, to being unable to walk, to being in a coma. And she was one of the longest living people that got this variant CJD. She lived almost 3 years in a coma before she finally died. And when they did the biopsy, they looked at the brain tissue, and it was this same thing as the Kuru brain tissue. And then it started to spread to other people. There were incidents of other people coming down with this variant. And sometimes you'll see an S in front of it, sporadic CJD or variant CJD. If you're too young, they'll call it sporadic. Here we'll see in America that they called it sporadic, and it kind of didn't fit. So let's go on to the next slide. All right, this is everything that they inoculated. I don't know why they're bringing this up out of order, but they inoculated with Kuru at Patuxent, the chimps, these three chimps, and then the gibbons and capuchins and spider monkeys, squirrel monkeys, marmosets, woolly monkeys, baboons, bonnets, bush babies, pattas, pigtailed marquis, sooty mangan primates. But anyway, they did all this, and this was at Patuxent. And then they decided to work with other animals, and they included not only Kuru, but the variant CJD samples and the scrapie, and they turned it into a big slurry mush. And they actually injected this into ferrets and minks and gerbils and goats and sheep and moles and rats and mice and all these things you see on the screen, dogs and cats and chickens and ducks and geese. And the guy that was in charge, they wanted Hadlow to be in charge, but he didn't want to. And so he went to Montana so he could have a nice, quiet life. So we'll see that name again. But it was 2 full years, nearly 3 years after they injected those three chimps that one of them started to show signs of withdrawal. A very outgoing, playful chimp started to get quiet, to be withdrawn, and to not want to do all the things she used to do. And so she finally passed away. The other two chimps also followed her. And so they had proof that they had transmitted Kuru to these three chimpanzees. And so the long latency period was just a problem for any kind of scientific research, which is why they were excited that they had developed mice that would succumb to it in 6 months. And
they're excited. I love how they're excited about it, you know, about putting it in mice, probably the most dangerous animal you could put a disease into.
Well, these were lab mice, so they weren't out running around. But,
I know, but still.
But now here comes another name, and I want you to pay attention to this guy, Robert C. Riesinger. And if you look him up, make sure you put the C in there, because there are two Dr. Robert Riesingers. And this one was a doctor, and he came. Joe Gibbs was really proud of the work they were doing at Patuxent. And so he invited Riesinger to come and check it out. And Riesinger was appalled. He thought, this is terrible. You have a disease that's 100% fatal, and you don't have a good containment program here. Those animals, those chimpanzees, for 2 years, they played in an outside run that other animals were exposed to. And you have these other things, and all of the natural wildlife could run through all of these outdoor things. You didn't have a good containment area. This was a place where they studied bird migrations, and birds were coming and going all places all over. Yeah. And so it's like, no, this is wrong. And he was vehemently trying to close it down. But Schmadel had a bigger gun, he had a bigger stick there. And so it never got closed down, but he saw the danger and tried to call out to people to stop it. But Gaius Sec came back to the United States when the first chimp started to go down, and they took necropsies and decided that this was definitely Kuru. So let's keep going. Let's see if my slide will be in order. So what caused this? The idea for a while was, is it a slow virus? Something that can remain hidden and then strike. They noted some things. Formaldehyde didn't carry it. They could cure it or kill it. They would pickle these brains, in formaldehyde to keep them safe and sound, from deteriorating. But they still carried Kuru. They tried autoclaving. Autoclaving did not kill Kuru. And leaving it dormant in the environment. They found that 3, 4, 5 years later, if they grazed sheep or cows in the same pastures where there had been scrapie or BSE, that it actually came back. And what causes these sponge-like holes in the brain? And finally, they decided it was a malformed protein, and they called it a prion. Now, I have a question for you. If you die, or if anyone dies, or anything dies, what is the last part of the body that deteriorates? What's the last part of the body that starts to show evidence of decomposition and change?
I don't know. Skin? I don't know.
Okay. It's a hard question and nobody's guessed it right. But the part of your body that changes the least is your eye, the fluid in your eye. I don't know if you've ever watched forensic programs, but sometimes somebody will be dead and embalmed and exhumed, and they'll try and get the fluid out of the eye because it still holds a lot of secrets. And so the eye is one of the things that they want to see. And so I just thought that was a very interesting thing. And so now, when they figured out what was causing this, that it wasn't anything alive, that's why they couldn't kill it, they started looking at protein because someone had actually denatured samples and taken all the protein out of it. And they found out when it was pure tissue with no protein, it didn't transmit what it had. And so then they started to look at protein, and they finally found that the problem was a misformed protein. And then they thought, well, we've been thinking it was in the brain and that it came in through the mouth and the digestive tract and apparently out the anus because it was in pasture lands where it could be passed on to other generations. And so they were thinking, what parts of the body actually can house prions? And the answers are pretty startling. Let me show you where most prions are found, or some of the prime places. Oh, here's our nasty picture again. The tongue, the brain, the sex organs, the lower intestines, and the anus are the places most likely to find this. Something unusual is that hamsters, the highest concentration of prions is in their tongue, and no one knows why it gathers there. But they found that prions can be anywhere in the body. They can be in all of the muscle tissues, and it just doesn't manifest symptoms until it destroys a good part of your brain. So now, where is prion disease today? This is the question. I don't know if you've heard of the chronic wasting disease plague that's hitting our cervid. That cervids are your wild hoofed animals. That's your deer, your elk, and your moose.
Yes, I have.
Okay. chronic wasting disease, CWD, is the same stuff. It creates the same brain pattern
Right.
of destruction. How did it get there? Well, that's the million-dollar question, but the epicenter of the CW disease is from Fort Collins, Colorado, where they have a huge research center. And it started there, and it first spread through herds of cervids that were being kept. One of their big sources of income is hunting, and hunters will pay good money to go to someplace where they can shoot some big game. And so they actually raise herds of cervids that they are going to put in places where hunters can hunt them. And so that was one of the first places. And they also shared everything they had with Wyoming Research Center too. And the word chronic wasting disease came from someone who was working in the Wyoming Center. And so that's what it's been called up there when it hits the cervid populations. Cattle have BSE, and chronic wild cervid populations have CWD.
But it's all the same thing, is what you're saying.
Same thing.
It really is same thing.
Same thing. It's the same type of destruction. It's from a malformed prion. Okay. Now we can talk about mad mink. And there was a mink outbreak in captive minks. People were raising minks for their coats. And it happened, I think, in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And guess where they were getting? Minks are voracious meat eaters. And so they went to the glue factories and they grabbed anything that was meat. And there were a lot of cows that were dead. And so cows naturally die. But cows are a great source of meat. And they would go to the glue factory and they would get this meat and they would feed it to the minks. And the minks ended up with mad cow. And they not only transferred the from the cattle to the minks, but they transferred it back from the minks to healthy cattle. So there was a little bit of transmission going on there. Now, can it transfer to humans? Isn't that what everyone wants to know? Well, there was a man, he was an avid hunter. And I think, let me see here in my notes. His name was, I am looking. I've laid this book here so I could find it quickly, and now I can't find it quickly. Anyway, all right, his name was Doug McEwen, and he was an avid hunter. He lived in Utah, and in 1998, he started to kind of lose his memory of some things. He was an accountant, and he worked in computer technology, and he would start losing things. And it got so bad that he went to a conference and said he'd call his wife at a certain time, and he didn't call her because he couldn't remember the phone number.
Oh,
and he finally had to give up the job. And when he died, they diagnosed it as variant CJD. And so was it because he was an avid hunter? Was it because he ate mostly elk? That was his favorite meat in the whole world to eat. We don't know. And here's something else. There was a group of squirrel hunters, a family up in Kentucky, and they went out and they had caught themselves a mess of squirrel. They brought them home, and next day for breakfast, they decided to have their favorite breakfast tasty. And yes, they had scrambled eggs with squirrel brain. I've never had that.
Oh no.
I'm not sure.
What's wrong with people, man? I don't know what's wrong with people, man. Why squirrel brains? I've heard people that told me they eat them, and I'm like, why? Like, there's a billion things you can eat out there. Why you want to eat a squirrel's brain?
I don't know. It seems to me it would be awfully small. You need quite a few to. Anyway, but brains in England, it was a big delicacy, and
Yeah.
something brain sandwiches, and something else that probably brought CJD into the general population was one of the favorite meals over there was tripe with liver, or excuse me, tripe with onions, and tripe, it's just cow stomach. So that was one of the favorite things, especially for the lower economic people. And so tripe was it was cheap, and they knew how to fix it, and they learned to like it. And so that's probably why they had problems with chronic or with variant CJD coming into the population over in Great Britain. But these 5 people all died of a variant that they called it sporadic. But when that many people in a group get it, it's not really sporadic. To me, one here, one over there, that's sporadic. When you have 5 in a group, it's like, not sporadic. So let me tell you about another group. And this group was in New Jersey. And this was a group of 18 people who all died of Creutzfeldt-Jakobsen's, sporadic Creutzfeldt-Jakobsen's. They were all under 65. In fact, most of them were 20s and 30s. And they all had, there was one lady who was really an activist, and she traced and she found everybody that died of something that looked like Alzheimer's or dementia in this area, because she lost her very good friend to it. And she found 18 people, and they had all eaten at a racetrack. They had not only all eaten at a racetrack, but they had all eaten at a certain restaurant in that racetrack. And there was never any research done about what may have happened or why 18 people ate there and got this stuff. There was no investigation ever done. And so, okay.
What did they eat?
Excuse me?
What did they eat?
I don't know. They didn't catalog it. They didn't do a big research. Probably something with beef in it. Probably they all had a hamburger. I don't know. But they never investigated the kitchen or the knife ware. Because remember, just washing this thing in the dishwasher ain't going to take it down. It survived autoclaving. And the reason, when they figured out the reason why the foray people had kuru, was originally they thought it was a religious thing, that if you ate the dead, that you would give them back life through you. And so that was what they originally believed. Later, they had a lady researcher, a social anthropologist, go and get in with the women and just talk to them. And she found out that really that their society was very repressive to women. And so that was kind of their way of getting back. When a guy died, they ate him. And it was kind of revenge.
Yeah.
And so it was cannibalism in both cases, between cattle eating cattle and between the foray people eating other foray people. And when these Gaia sect brought more enlightenment to the people, that it wasn't witchcraft and the idea of cannibalism died away, so did kuru in their tribes. So now variant CJD can be acquired by food exposure and can be transmitted by blood transfusions. I don't know if we still do, I haven't researched it, but for a long time, anyone who had lived in Great Britain during the time of CJW could not give blood because it was transmissible. And they found that they couldn't kill it on instruments. So anything that had been used with a person who died from CJD could not be used again because there was no way to cleanse it. And so here's a startling, the rest of it is factual and it's more current. Almost 7 million people in the United States are living with Alzheimer's right now. And
I lost two grandparents. Well, one the diagnosed was dementia, but my grandmother I was closer to. We lost to Alzheimer's, and I wouldn't wish that hell on anybody.
that is very sad. And we have 7 million people. It's threatening to overwhelm our healthcare system. There are so many people that have it. And remember, Alzheimer's and Crutchfield Jacobs were cohorts. They worked together. I shouldn't say cohorts, but they were fellow researchers in the field of mental deterioration, shall we put it. Now,
before we go on to this next part,
okay,
we're getting into this. We're going to go to a commercial break. You all right with that, Christine? We'll be about
Sure.
5 minutes. We'll come back. So we're going to go to commercial break and continue this. Like I said, guys, tonight it's going to be a little, it's not all about paranormal. Sometimes we do, and we talk about cattle mutilations in this on this show with other guests and that. And I really wanted to cover this tonight. It's a bit scary to me. Like I said, real life thing. I mean, I believe in the paranormal. I believe there are things out there that can hurt you, but real life, sometimes these things are really scary that are floating around. And as somebody who's lost a family member, multiple family members to Alzheimer's and these diseases, it scares me. So that's what we're getting into tonight. We will open up the phone lines. We'll see if we have time to take calls. We'll see, but I want Christine to get through her presentation, so we'll see if we can get calls in or not later. But we're going to go to commercial break here. When we come back, we'll be back with our guest, Christine Duez, CD Sasquatcher, as she's known. We're going to talk more about these cattle mutilations, prion disease, after the short commercial break.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself. The experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday at the live stream with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift. A refreshing and fun read, I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
The city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, the dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID 00JBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Christine Duez, also known as CD Sasquatcher. We're talking about cattle mutilations tonight, prion disease. To me, this stuff scares the heck out of me. Makes you want to go vegan, right? No, I don't know. I still love my steak and my hamburger, man. I wanted to make hamburgers tonight. I didn't get to. Kind of glad I didn't after tonight's show. But our guest tonight, I am extremely interested in this topic, especially, is this related to things like Alzheimer's? We'll get into that tonight. I'm not going to open the phone lines up just yet. I will soon here. We'll see. If we get time to take calls, we will. But I want to make sure Christine gets all the time she can to get this information out before it gets too late tonight. All right, so we're going to have a lot to get to with her. So let's go ahead and get back to our guest. All right, let's get Christine back up here. All right, Christine.
Ready.
Let's get back into it.
Okay. I wanted to add something. I wanted to add a man named Prusner, who was a very talented protein sequencer. And so they sent him some of the prion protein to sequence. And he found that the reason that the bodies of any of the victims weren't even noticing it was that it came from, how do I say this? It didn't trigger any kind of invader response because it came from regular proteins, but I'm getting a little confused.
All right.
Protein actually malformed and your body couldn't metabolize it. And because your body couldn't metabolize it, it kept getting more and more prevalent inside of your body. And your body didn't realize that it wasn't right. So it didn't destroy it. So his name was Prusner, and he coined the word prion. Just a very talented guy. And Gaiusek was mad at him because he found the disease. He should have been able to name it. But when Prusner started calling it prion, then everybody started calling it prion. And when I was just on the website, the NIH website, they were calling it prion proteins as in distinction from just we left off with almost 7 million people are living with Alzheimer's in the United States. And there was a very small study done on people who died from Alzheimer's, looking at their brain. And they found that it was like extremely small, like out of maybe 20 people that they autopsied. And if your loved one is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dies, I mean, and you treated them for Alzheimer's and the doctor said it was Alzheimer's, and that's on the death certificate, you're unlikely to want to pay probably about $1,500 to get your own separate autopsy to make sure it was Alzheimer's. But there are like maybe a very small percentage of all the Alzheimer's deaths that really are prion. When they did this example, or when they did autopsies of people who had died of Alzheimer's, they found that a small percentage, maybe 2 to 3% of those deaths could have been or were a prion disease. So now let's go to the next.
Hold on. Say that last thought again. You cut out for a minute there.
Okay. That 2 to 3% of people who were diagnosed as having died of Alzheimer's disease really had this prion disease. They really died of variant CJD.
So this was 20 people, very small.
Very small group.
So 2 to 3%. So, we're talking about like 2 or 3 of those people. Maybe
Not
5.
very many.
Not many had Alzheimer's, and these autopsies showed they had this prion.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is there prion disease near you? Oh, by the way, don't be too vocal. Oprah Winfrey had this, I don't know, program where she talked about mad cow back when mad cow was the rage, and talked about it. And the American Cattlemen's Association were not happy, and they put her into litigation for over 6 years, and they made her have after she talked about going vegan because she was afraid of this stuff. The next show, they had the representative from the Cattlemen's Association on there telling everybody why she was wrong.
I remember this.
Yeah. And so, they're very strong. And people from the USDA and the Cattlemen's Association, they just kind of switch hats. They're pretty interchangeable. So the Cattlemen's Association and the USDA are pretty strong, and it's pretty hard to get through their defenses here about this whole thing. But let's look at this. It says the most common form of prion disease in people is sporadic Creutzfeldt-Jakobson's disease, and other forms of human prion disease include things I've never heard of. I know variant CJD, fatal familiar insomnia, Gertzmannian Strasser, Flinker, I don't know, syndrome, and Kuru. And these are from the NIH, and this one was May 20th, 2024. So these are not old. A lot of this research that I was looking at was done in the early 20s. This is now more contemporary. In livestock and wildlife, prion diseases such as scrapie, which affects sheep, chronic wasting disease, which are cervids, deer, elk, and moose, and mad cow and cattle can be spread by casual contact or contamination of feeds or the environment. Prions can also be infectious if inadvertently transferred from person to person by invasive medical procedures. Like, you get a lung transplant or a cornea transplant or something like that.
Yeah.
As of 2019, more than 250 cases of variant CJD have occurred worldwide, the majority being in the United Kingdom, and that's according to the National Institute of Health. And variant CJD has been acquired by food exposure and transmitted by blood transfusions. It also can transfer in utero.
From the mother to child?
Yeah. And the first mad cow in Canada had actually 3 calves before she came down with symptoms. But here in the United States, they usually don't check cattle under 3. They don't expect it in the little ones. The only ones they check routinely are the downers. All downers are checked. And then the other, they check 2 to 3%, just variety. They just take a sampling to check them for good health. And with the cervid population in some states, if you bring in a deer or something that you bag, it has to have it prion checked. But it's not true in all states. It's true in some states that they want it checked for prions, and they won't process it because, of course, anything that gets on it, you can't get it off of it. States, but not in all states. So I think that's my last slide. Other than the bibliography, Richard Rhodes was a famous author. He won, not the Nobel Prize, the one for Grammy, anyway, for writing. And he wrote a book called Deadly Feasts. Got to have an S on the end of it. If you get another book by accident, I think it's some sort of love triangle or something, tracking the secrets of a terrifying new plague. And Richard Rhodes, excellent book. And then Brain Trust, the hidden connection between man and cow. Yes, that's Colin Kelleher, and he's a PhD. He is a researcher, and he worked on the Skinwalker Ranch. He was one of the people that actually did, some of that stuff. And the other one's called Stalking the Herd, Unraveling the Cattle Mutilation Mystery. And I wanted to get into this. Christopher O'Brien wrote an excellent book way back before anyone had ever heard of mad cow or CWD. And saying that he believed that we had a network of bases that had been closed down that were being secretly used by the government for helicopter operations, and that they were strategically placed to be downwind, downstream from nuclear reactors and nuclear waste dumps. And what the purpose was to study the cattle and the water and to see if there was any radioactive problems being caused by the dumps and the radioactivity that's in the air and the water. And that it just became an excellent place to go ahead with cattle mutilations. And Colin Kelleher, being a researcher and a biologist, I don't think he's a doctor. I think he's a vet. His background's veterinarian, but I wouldn't swear to it. He said that they say there's nothing in cattle that would inform them of what kind of chemicals was being used. And then he said that a careful study of all the chemicals that you could use to bring down a cow, there's a couple of them you could pick that either deteriorate very rapidly or that break down in the body or that look like normal metabolic waste. And so they would not be detected. And he also said that there was one cow found, and when they rolled her over, there was a large bore hypodermic needle under her. And you could see like the helicopter could have come in chasing her and darted her. And you could see like where she had fallen. And he said that if he wanted to get large samples of blood in a quick way, he would go into the carotid artery with a large bore syringe, and it would take less than half an hour to pump all the blood out of a cow. And speaking of all the blood in a cow, do you know, now this to me is utterly gross, but they feed the beef, the cows or the calves that they're going to use to make veal out of. It's called milk substitute, and it's really cow's blood, and they force feed it to them because it gives them the growth, but they don't use their muscles. They don't let them exercise. So it's very soft, pliable meat. And it's like, no, that to me is the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, again, who comes up with these ideas? Like, I want to, this is not a promo tonight for people to go vegetarian. my mom's
Don't
a
do that.
vegetarian.
FDA will be on your back.
You're right, but because I like my hamburgers, I wanted to make hamburgers tonight, but it's like, why do these things? This
Did
should
you
seem obvious. Go ahead, Gene.
have you heard of the osculus? How they're putting the osculus on a lot of the cattle, showing these like big open vast fields to make them think that they're
Yeah,
out in these good conditions to try to grow better meat.
I don't know. All this stuff scares me. Is somebody like you talked about? I like for like my grandfather, who they said had dementia. The last 2 years of his life, he never even talked. He was, until the day he died, and I've said this on the show, the day he died, he just suddenly laughed and said, life's a joke, and he died a couple hours later. But that's after 2 years of not talking.
That's scary stuff. So anyway, did you get any questions? Or do you have any?
Since we only have a little bit of time left, I did open up the phone lines for the audience tonight. If you guys want to call in, I got the numbers up here: 219-230-4444, 260-225-9419. Because we're not going to go too much later, but if we have anybody who wants to call in with questions tonight, and I don't know if you had any in the chat room tonight from anybody. I saw there was one I should have started. Darn it, and I lost it. Spike proteins do not get a blood transfusion if you can help it. Yeah, that's a whole other deal. What they're giving these new mRNA shots to animals. You've seen that, haven't you?
I know that when they sequence the prion protein, that all of the different types, the scrapie and the kuru and the mad cow and stuff, have a slightly different structure, but they all produce the same things. And I was reading, I read the whole book on AIDS and the band played on. And the reason that there's no AIDS vaccination is because if two people that have AIDS get together, it's almost like when a man and a woman get together because the genes meld. And so you have a little from both of them. And so the AIDS virus will actually take parts from both of these, both contributors. And there's no vaccine because it can change that fast. And prion disease has been shown to jump species pretty fast. Right now, the government will tell you there's no evidence of it jumping species. And it's like, well, what about the mad mink outbreak? And total evidence.
Well, they sure as hell were trying their best to make it jump species. Yeah, that seems to be the ongoing story. The question here from Janice, my question, is there a test and a cure?
No, it's 100% fatal, and they don't. I have not heard of any testing they can do. If you have Alzheimer's or dementia, you could maybe order a test, but it's expensive. And when the doctor assures you it's Alzheimer's, most people don't go ahead, and it wouldn't do any good. It's 100% fatal.
Well, watching my grandmother go through it, like I said, with my grandfather, we had a very distant relationship. I didn't get to know him very well. And I got the stories from my aunt and others who were around him towards the end. But my grandmother, I got to watch the whole thing. And like I said, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. It haunts me, the memories like her standing in her kitchen where she used to make wonderful meals. And I mean, she was my favorite cook. Everybody's food is compared to my grandmother's, It's hard for me to talk about this. And sorry, Mom, if you're listening. I just remember her holding up a spoon and just going, I can't tell you what this is. I don't know the name of this. It's like she's real. My grandmother used to know every state and capital, like I remember reciting all that back to me, and she was a great writer. And I just remember holding up that spoon and going, I can't tell you what this is called. It's lost my, my mind on this. She's like, and I remember just being just frustrated, because she had such a great memory before all this. I remember finding her lost. I work retail, and she was in my store, which I'd never seen her out there shopping. And she was like, didn't even recognize me. And that's when I really was horrified to really come to the conclusion that my grandmother was slipping. And like I said, I couldn't wish that upon anybody. How many people you think? How many? They did that 20-person test. I mean, 2 to 3%. But do you think it's worse? Do you think a lot of the Alzheimer's that we're seeing and dementia is from this?
Idea. I know if there's a way for it to get into the human population, but it's so slow acting. I would want them to do studies on sporadic CJD, but they're not looking for it. I mean, to me, that's the big problem. They're not looking like that a restaurant that they didn't look in. And
Right. Like you said, there's things that they could have looked in. Well, I'm not trying to get into politics. I don't want to. I hate all the sides. I hate all the politics. It's stupid. But I will admit to being one person who did campaign for RFK Jr. To run for president. And my hope, but I hate getting my hopes up, is his promise to study chronic disease, to turn the NIH around. Instead of working on gain of function and trying to create diseases, sorry, I know that's their way of getting in front of it, right? But we heard her presentation tonight. You see how that worked out. And turn them around to studying these things, going back to a restaurant like that and finding out, what did you serve these people? Like having let's find out, why are we having so many more people with Alzheimer's? Have you seen the statistics on the increase in Alzheimer's in people?
it's up to 7 million Americans right now. And yeah, it's been going up exponentially.
Right. That's a chronic disease. So
Yeah.
my hope is, and if you hate me for this because you have your political beliefs, I'm sorry, but I worked a campaign for RFK Jr. because I believe that we are all suffering under lots of chronic diseases from all the different toxins, from all the mismanagement in the FDA, USDA, NIH, all these
The
places have
environment,
mismanaged everything. The
everything.
bureaucracy, and like you said, the revolving door, the USDA, the revolving door of the NIH, the revolving door of our FDA. We have a big problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I believe that. And I believe that our biggest killers, well, like heart disease and stuff, is just because of what we eat.
Yeah.
And I love a good steak. I like prime rib, and I will eat it once in a while. But I would say 90% of the time, meat is something that goes with my veggies because I like veggies. I like steak. I like broccoli and cauliflower and all that.
So
good
this
stuff.
didn't turn you into it. This didn't turn you into a vegetarian. You still have a nice steak once in a while.
Yeah, but I do a lot of vegan
I don't
eating.
blame you.
I do
Like
it
I
more
said,
for health than
I wanted to cook rodeo burgers tonight. My boys, like this last summer, I got them addicted to onion rings on top of hamburgers, basically, and the only thing Dad's good at cooking is stuff on the grill. And they never liked burgers until I put onion rings and barbecue sauce and ranch on it, and they love it, So I like to make hamburgers, but it scares me. What am I feeding them? We've talked about going and trying to get more local stuff, but I mean, would any of that matter? I mean, so we should get to this point. So basically what you're stipulating to is with these cattle mutilations that are happening, when they find these cows, this is some part of our government secretly autopsying or taking biopsies of these cattle and these mutilations because they are trying to keep an eye on this?
Yeah, I think they're trying to look at the spread of it and if it's getting, where it's going and things like that. And if they came out and told the public, that's what Great Britain did. They kept it a secret because they didn't want to panic people. But how many people, if they really thought that, what they buy at their grocery store might kill them, would stop buying it? And the beef industry is enormously huge. And I live in Florida, and you may think oranges, but citrus greening has taken out our orange industry, but we are
Oh, I
huge
know.
cattle producers. South of me, totally cattle.
Yeah.
And during the Civil War, we provided all the meat for the Southern Army just
Can
from
I
what
ask-
we raised here. Huh?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
A couple months ago, we had got this meat. I don't remember if it was like 85%, 15% fat or lean, whatever it is. Some of the ground beef had been, all right, but this one particular batch that we had got, the meat tightened up, and it was almost like stringy, as if they had added some sort of like a filler to it, or it was just the weirdest thing. It didn't taste right. The meat didn't cook right.
Yeah. Mm.
I don't know if you've heard of this happening, if they're adding things to the meat as a filler, perhaps.
Heard anything?
It was almost like stringy.
Well, you know what I've given up is bacon. I started a few years ago. I can't from any store bought bacon. We tried several different brands. I'm like, none of this tastes right. It doesn't taste like bacon should. It doesn't. Something's not right about it. And I don't know what happened in the bacon market, but I cannot find good bacon. I won't. We don't even buy it anymore.
Yeah, bacon is highly processed, and so is all of your luncheon meats. It contains a lot of stuff that's not very good
Yeah, I
for
don't
you.
eat any of it. My wife doesn't allow it, and yeah, but we want to start buying it. Like so some like my wife's talking about going to more like local and like getting a freezer and buying like it in bulk, getting it from more like natural source. I mean, do you have any recommendations for people on that?
No, I know there are places that sell side of beef, freezer cut in half, but I don't know if they get it. There was Japan will not import American beef. Now, take it for what it's worth. A company who said that if we test 100% of all of our cattle, this was a proposition to the Japanese government. If we promise that we are testing 100% of our meat for prion disease, will you buy our meat? And the Japanese government said yes. And the American government said, no, you can't do that. You can't test 100% because
Why?
there's some old archaic law, and I don't have it written down here. It's in the book, and I would have to look it up. But they can actually invoke it and say, no, you can't do that. You can't test 100% of the meat that you sell.
Money talks. That's what it is. It's money. You don't want to put a bunch of people out of business. At the same time, I mean, we hear about the stories of them like worried about avian flu and like killing all these flocks of chickens and causing the price of eggs to go up. They don't seem to have a problem in that market killing a bunch of chickens over avian flu and all that. But I also think that's a big push because they want to push these meat industries and egg producers and dairy into these mRNA vaccines for our livestock.
I don't know.
Under the threat, if you don't do it, we say you have avian flu and we destroy your whole livestock. Which they're
It's
doing.
possible. Lots of things are possible. I know during COVID, I never took any of the shots.
No,
and
me neither.
so I wanted to go on some vacations, and I couldn't. I like to travel. I couldn't go to Chile, and I didn't think about it. I wanted to go on a cruise to Alaska, but I couldn't have gotten into Canada without shots. But then I thought, well, I could have just stayed on the boat. I should have taken that cruise.
Screw Canada. Sorry, Canadians, but
But where cattle mutilations occur, there's a lot of CJD or mad cow or stuff going on. Like it was a place up somewhere in Saskatchewan, Canada, and they had actually somebody with CJD died there. They had a mad cow there, and they had CWD there. They had all three of them in this area, and they had cattle mutilations too.
And here it is. You had somebody try to stop. They they literally were trying to inject this into all these different animals, unsecure. Read Stephen King's The Stand, okay? It gets out of a military base. I mean, this is what scares the living hell out of me. It's like, look how much they tried. I'm sorry, we'll get into it. Screw YouTube. NIH did everything, and Fauci did everything they could to cover up what they did. It's plain truth. You can argue with me all day you want, but I think enough facts are out there. The jury is out, in my opinion, They did everything they could to cover up what they did with EcoHealth Alliance, Peter Duszak, and what they did in China at the Wuhan lab. They did actively try to cover it up. Why? Because they know they are responsible for creating something that plagued the world, and it's their full responsibility. I'm sorry, guys. That's why they covered it up. And I can get demonetized for this or whatever. You can unsubscribe if you don't like that opinion. Do your research. But they were doing gain of function. They can reword it all they want. It was so bad, and 100 scientists sent Obama during his administration telling him, we need to stop doing this research in America. It's too dangerous. So what did they do? They outsourced it. Didn't stop doing the research. We just got it supposedly out of America. I don't think so. But we outsourced a lot of it to places like Ukraine and to China, and it's great, right? You know, again, that's what scares me is somebody creating something like in The Stand. You know, like it's created in a lab. They think they can control it, and they got it, and they don't. They don't. I mean, Wuhan was already cited as not having the right facility to be able to do the experiments they were doing, and we didn't care. Fauci didn't care. EcoHealth Alliance didn't care. They still did it.
Yeah, something else is GMO foods, because once you genetically modify something, and you know, they have, it's called CRISPR technology. Have you ever looked into that? And so you can actually buy packets to insert into genes to make whatever changes you want to have whatever.
Well, that goes right back to COVID and the creation of COVID with the cleavage site and the CRISPR technology used that created COVID.
Well, I think that's what Hitler was trying to do. He just didn't have enough technology to get it done, but he was trying to create the perfect race.
Well, people will be like, well, NIH, they were trying to protect us by researching these viruses and stuff, so in case they came out of the public. People don't understand what went down with Fauci, NIH, especially in 2000 with the whole anthrax scare. Go do your research on that. The NIH was losing money because they had a lot of money tied up in AIDS research. Remember that? Yeah, that was going away. That money was going away. And people like Fauci within NIH and NIH, what's the other part that he's part of, found a new way to get money from the Department of Defense. Oh, they couldn't do research on biological weapons because of the number of treaties involved, but we could do research on viral. And we could basically still get the same research we want for biological weapons, but under the guise of the NIH. And Fauci had a new big source of money for the NIH. And that's what they became.
Have you ever read Dr. Mary's Monkey?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it talks about the polio epidemic and where it came from. And why it sprung up. And it was because we introduced penicillin, which was great at killing things, but it also killed off some things that were keeping polio viruses in check. And so that's how that began to spread. Yeah, very interesting.
We don't know the consequences of these things, sadly, until years down the road. But we have to have the institutions that are going to be honest about it, transparent, which they're not. And people got to be able to openly talk about it without being censored.
Yeah.
Christine, sorry. It's been an honor to have you on the show tonight. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed being here. And if you need something else, I do crop circles too.
You do. I'll have you on to talk about crop circles if you got you want to do a presentation on that. I am super interested in crop circles. As long as you're not going to tell me it was just two farmers doing it the whole time.
I don't think so. In fact, I have a mundane reason for cattle mutilations, but I don't have any mundane reasons for crop circles.
No, I don't think it's a mundane reason. No, I think it's a very serious reason for cattle mutilations. We don't have to. It doesn't always. These mysteries that you start out as mystery don't always end with some supernatural explanation. Sometimes it ends with a very reality-based. Like very more. I'd rather it be I'd rather it be aliens mutilating these cattle for whatever their reasons are than our government doing this because they're worried about like how far this is spread disease-wise. So I'd rather have the other explanation. Your explanation's much more scary.
So, any new disease that gets out there in the environment is scary because we have no defense against it. That's what happened with AIDS, and they have a pretty good chain of custody back into Africa. Ebola was another one. I don't know if you've looked at Ebola, but they cannot find the carrier for Ebola, and it will wear itself out after 3 or 4 generations. I mean, the first generation is virulent, and then it gets less and less as it goes into more generations.
Unless they do something to it, unless they mess with it. You know, that's my fear is they get it and then they it's like, oh, let's see how dangerous we can make this.
Find it first, and it's like they can't find it. They know there's a cave, and if you go into it, you're liable to end up with Ebola, but they don't. They
still don't know why. Yeah.
Scrutinized the cave and can't find anything.
That's scary. Well, thank you so much, Christine. You've been a wonderful guest, and definitely keep in contact. We should get you on to talk about crop circles because I definitely want to talk about crop circles. I'm so interested in crop circles. All right, guys, that's it for the show. We're going to end early tonight. Time change. I gripe about it every year. You know, our Bill used to gripe about it every year, too. I'm not alone. I hate the time change. It's still happening. Why is it still happening? And yeah, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. Sorry, we're going to end the show early tonight. Thank you, everybody who watched. Thank you to all the subscribers and who shared the show out. Keep telling your friends about Paranormal Soup, where the weird happens live every Sunday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central. I can't think of the times right now. 8 p.m. Pacific time. And, you can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can also show your support by being a Patreon. You find the links in the show description. Or a YouTube member. We just started. You become a YouTube member, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. We are looking at doing some things for YouTube members this summer and for Patreons. We're going to try to do some exclusive things. I was thinking, tell me what you think about, like, we do an exclusive thing with YouTube members. I mean, we're talking to do it in Spirit Box. Maybe one where we talk to AI all night. Just me and the YouTube members. We're going to talk to AI, like Work or something like that, and see how crazy it gets. This AI is getting nuts. Next Sunday, I cannot wait. Great guest, Paul Anthony Wallace. Yes, is going to come back on the show, talk about his new book coming out that day, The Eden Enigma. Next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel. Everybody have a great night. See you next week.